Good evening. It is just after, well, close to 10:45 now here on the East Coast. We are coming to you live to talk and discuss Royal Rumble 2025, WWE's first premium live event of the year. This, of course, many people's favorites, one of their favorite shows of the year, mine included. So glad to be back here to talk this show with you. It's been a little over a month since we've done one of these live shows. So good to be back and good to be talking this very big show. I'm sure that we're going to have tons of comments and whatnot in the chat. Feel free to throw your hat in the ring, so to speak. If you've got anything that you want to talk about specifically, we can certainly bring it up. VIP members, of course, are encouraged to give us a call, either via video or just via audio. If you just want to hear, just want your voice heard, that is always welcome as well. Those links are typically available on the PWTorch social pages, as well as at the top of my report on PWTorch.com. The free version of the site has the link to the YouTube broadcast, and the VIP version of the report has both the link to the show as well as the exclusive VIP caller link if you want to be part of the show. I'm not going to be doing this alone, though. I do have longtime PWTorch columnist and contributor to this show, former host of this show, the one and only Mr. Greg Parks. Welcome back to Wrestling Night in America. Greg, it's great to have you.
It's great to be here, Brandon. I know it's been a while since I've been on PWTorch Audio. Got a lot of life things happening, as some people know about. And last night I was asked to co-host with you, and I said yes. And of course, then I woke up this morning with a terrible sore throat. And
that's how it works.
I've been medicating all day. I've been drinking tea. I've got the lozenge in. Like I was not going to miss this Royal Rumble post show because, like you, the Rumble is my favorite event of the year on the WWE calendar. So I missed this show last year. I called in because I attended live in Tampa. So I certainly didn't want to miss this year's.
Well, the good news is this was an early one, 6 o'clock start on the East Coast. So they went long. It was certainly a longer show than I even anticipated. When I was setting up this broadcast earlier in the day, I figured 10 o'clock, we'll probably get on the air by 10 o'clock. And it was closer to 10:30 by the time the show got done. So we're getting on the air here about 15 minutes later. But it's good to have a show done well before midnight that you're joining me for. Usually we're lamenting about the fact that we're probably going to be going until about 2 a.m. We certainly don't have to worry about that here. Though we do have a lot of people on the stream and a lot of people in the chat. So there's plenty of stuff to talk about. Real quick, Greg, off the top, obviously a very, very surprising result in the men's Royal Rumble match. I assume that is where we will spend the most time. So we'll start at the top of the show and work our way up to that point where I assume that the majority of our discussion is going to come from. Again, lots of comments in the chat. People seem to be mostly positive on the show. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we'll get into in terms of the details, but I came away feeling pretty good overall. I think that there were certain pieces of the show that you could point to that maybe didn't go quite as well as one may have hoped. But I think overall, this is going to be a pretty satisfying start to WrestleMania season for most people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. This wasn't a perfect show by any stretch. They weren't perfect Rumbles, whether you're talking about the men's or the women's, but I had them both as a thumbs up for a couple different, they were the reasons I like them differently. The women's Rumble, it seemed like there was a lot of action. There wasn't necessarily a lot of stories, but as I posted on Twitter and Blue Sky at Greg M. Parks during the show, I thought this was probably the most star-studded women's Rumble that maybe we've ever seen. And I know that's a talking point that the announcers make every year, but legitimately, I think top to bottom, this had the most stars of any women's Rumble. And then for the men, it wasn't as action filled. I think it had more kind of mini moments in it. And then you get down toward the end and you had a lot of really interesting stuff happen at the end. Eliminations that happened, who eliminated who. I think we can spend some time on that later on, probably. The CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns story that has intertwined itself throughout those three. And then the unexpectedness of Jey Uso winning when you had John Cena right there, and he was probably the favorite to win. Certainly Uso is not going to be universally liked as a winner. I think he's kind of a polarizing pick because there are some people who just don't see him as a WrestleMania main eventer. I think they see him as a fun guy who gets the crowd up and can visit the main events from time to time. But I think in a lot of people's minds, that WrestleMania main event is sacred. And I think a lot of people don't see Jey Uso as having gotten to that level yet, especially when you look at the names in this, the John Cenas, the Seth Rollins, the CM Punk, the Roman Reigns, and picking Jey Uso over them, I think is going to cause some dissatisfaction with certain members of the fan base.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many talking points with that men's rumbles, particularly, and a lot of different directions that they can go, a lot of different stories they could tell. I noted in my report for PWTorch tonight that they did a good job intertwining a lot of stories that they were already telling, and then quite a few as well that they were kicking off tonight, that they were getting ready to go forward with for a WrestleMania season. Let's not waste any time. Then we'll get right into it with the women's Royal Rumble match. This one kicked off the show. Before the match began, they did introduce Stephanie McMahon, who came out and kind of did like the rah company speech. She got a big reaction, but had very little to say overall, other than the fact that she did sort of announce that this was WWE's official debut internationally on Netflix with premium live events. So WWE Network is dead. That is now a thing of the past. It has been, of course, dead for quite a few years now here stateside, but for international viewers now, they are also being forced to Netflix as well. So I guess a rest in peace to WWE Network. There's still a lot of things about that I miss and that I loved, but we are in the Netflix era. Anything you want to say about Stephanie's appearance, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe I think they had just announced that she's going to have a talk show on ESPN or one of its platforms or whatever like that. I thought maybe they'd bring her out to kind of plug that. I don't know that they did, but that's kind of my assumption was I thought they would have gone harder at that, and that's why she was there. But if they did mention it, it was kind of in passing.
Yeah, they that was brought up on SmackDown last night. That's where they were talking about that specifically. And then tonight it was more just she was there to kind of introduce the show.
Yep. Just a reminder that she's part of the WWE family.
Yep. I mean, big reaction for her. She also, had the benefit of being the first one out technically. So I don't know if that aided her in any way, but
she learned from her husband.
She certainly did. And her father before him.
Absolutely.
It's in the family. So opening match, Women's Royal Rumble. Charlotte Flair is the winner of this one in a little over an hour and 10 minutes, 70 minutes, 27 seconds. By my count, she eliminates Roxanne Perez last to win this match. Some interesting choices throughout this one. I thought that they tried to do a lot in the way of telling a story with Bianca Belair and Naomi. I thought that they were going to tease more dissension between the two of them because it seemed to be that that's the direction that we were headed, but we did not get any of that. Instead, it was just, pretty straightforward. They had their singular moment where Naomi embraced Jordynne Grace in the center of the ring after they saw each other for the first time. But other than that, it was just straightforward. Belair, Naomi working together throughout to take on Pure Fusion Collective was largely their foil throughout the course of this one. They got some shine that I didn't necessarily expect. They eventually get dumped by Bianca and Naomi. But Charlotte is the big story here. She's a late entrant. She gets a big reaction, big, long, drawn-out entrance, and she hits her spots, and she is, by the end of things, by the final few minutes, it's abundantly clear that she is the winner, for better or for worse. Greg, take it away. Anything you want to talk about the match itself, and then also touch on, this Charlotte Flair return, what do you think it means for WrestleMania? Are you glad that they just threw her right in and gave her the win, or anything you want to add?
I'm not a huge Charlotte Flair fan. I think she's very good in the ring, but I think she takes up too much. She's kind of a vacuum in a way. She just takes up too much of the energy and the oxygen in the women's division when she's around. And I mean, not necessarily her fault. It's the way she's booked. But, I have some problems with her performances as well. But all that said, I didn't have a problem with her winning here. I think her coming back was a huge story. She's always been treated as one of, if not the biggest star in the women's division. So no matter what I feel about her personally or her booking, this is what it is. And so I do think enough has changed in the women's division on both Raw or SmackDown, depending on where she goes, presumably on SmackDown, that there are some new and fresh and intriguing matchups for her. We're kind of ushering in a new generation of women's wrestlers at the top. It's kind of like, the Becky Lynches and the Baileys are still there and they're still around, but you can kind of see they're closer to the end than the beginning, and you have this new crop coming in as well. It's not quite the passing of the torch time yet, but you could see it happening in the next few years. And so that does bring forward a number of women who Charlotte maybe hasn't interacted with a ton in the past, who could be in her way over the next few months, that could make things a little more interesting than they otherwise would if she had been around for the last year, which she hasn't. So I'm not as down on the win as some people are. Again, I think it puts someone who feels a little fresh in there. Now, who knows how long that freshness feel will last? I mean, she could cut her first promo on SmackDown and I'm like, I remember this, and it could be like, I regret saying that on Sunday. I think Roxanne Perez lasting from number 3 all the way until the end is really interesting. There's something there with that we should read into, I'm sure. So that was, I thought the selections from NXT were all really good selections. Jada Parker, yes. Stephanie Vecchir, and Julia were all smart. Even Lash Legend, I thought she got a really nice opportunity there when she came in, and she shined there. If you're someone who only remember her from her early days in NXT and then you saw her tonight, you would see that she's come a long way, which she has. So I thought all of that was cool. You had the surprise with Alexa Bliss, Jordan Grace, who was announced as now a member of the WWE/NXT roster here, Trish Stratus. So the surprises were big. Nikki Bella at number 30. I would have preferred AJ Lee, but Nikki Bella at number 30 is a huge surprise. So I thought they did the surprises right. And that goes along with what I was saying earlier about this being one of the more star-studded women's rumbles that we've ever seen. And I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the men's and just the difference between the two rumbles, that the women had more action. We're kind of used to Royal Rumbles now, where if you're not in the center of the ring being focused on, you're kind of laying in the corners and recovering. Or if you're Penta, you're laying there for 15 minutes. But the women, I thought, when they weren't the focus, they were still staying busy. They were still treating this like a fight. They weren't resting or, waiting for their cue to do something else. So I enjoyed that aspect of it too, because that's what makes the rewatches so fun. And the Royal Rumble is a rewatchable match because there's so much happening, or theoretically there's so much happening in the ring at the time, you might not catch it all on the first watch. But if everybody's laying in the corners while the focus is on somebody in the middle of the ring, you don't feel like you really need to rewatch it. You don't feel like you necessarily missed anything.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot in this match that worked to the benefit of presenting certain wrestlers in really positive lights. I think you saw that Roxanne Perez really got some shine tonight, and unexpectedly. I mean, I wouldn't have expected her to be, a top star in this match, but she was certainly presented that way. I thought that they did a really good job at segmenting certain portions. You had the early minutes of the match were largely focused on Naomi and Bianca Belair, both who entered relatively early on. and who got in, plenty of work with, as I had mentioned before, Pure Fusion Collective. They had a really cool spot with Lash Legend and Jada Parker that you had already mentioned, Greg. I also really liked the comedic relief of Chelsea Green, who continues to just be really impressive in the role that she's playing. She's bringing the right kind of comedy to situations, and
she's going to turn herself babyface. I mean,
she already has.
The fans love the performance aspect and just how committed she is to this geeky role, and they're going to turn her babyface with it.
Yeah, I mean, for my money, she more or less already is. I mean, I know that they're booking her as a heel, but I mean, people were upset every time she got beat down. There was that spot set up that I was kind of leading into here, where Jada Parker and Lash Legend kind of have their moment in the middle of the ring, and Naomi and Bianca Belair end up getting involved, and they're all sort of kind of making light of the situation, being jovial, whatever. It's sort of implied that they're on friendly terms. And then Chelsea steps in the middle of them all, like she wants to be friends with them too. And they're all like, what the hell are you doing? And they beat her down, and the crowd boos. Otherwise, people who they otherwise, especially Bianca and Naomi, would be cheering. So Chelsea is certainly an interesting character, and one that they have gotten a lot out of in the last several months. Derek Hubbard noting in the chat, not the biggest fan of Chelsea, especially as a champion, but she added some great flavor to the match tonight. And I think that is certainly the case. I think that she added just a certain level of levity that these matches often have, but that they don't always do well.
Yeah.
It's something that you really have to walk a fine line to pull that kind of comedy off. And I think that Chelsea does it exceptionally well. I didn't think that this match overall was as strong as last year's Women's Royal Rumble. I really was a fan of that match. Thought it was well booked. Probably more akin to how I felt the Men's Rumble came off tonight. But I did think that this match was still good. I thought that they did a really good job with the stories that they were trying to tell, and with the majority of the women that they had in the match. There was some stuff, towards the end, as there's going to be in most of these matches, where things are just missed. Eliminations come too rapid fire. We'll talk about that in the men's match later on, where they sort of build up all these men and all these women in the ring, and then they kind of go on this elimination spree, which I get the idea of it. They're looking to set up these big flurries of offense and exciting moments, but it leaves for a lot of breaks in between the action where you really just have nothing going on. And so I think both matches could have been better paced in that regard.
And that's another difference between the women's and the men's match. The women's match, for the most part, had 8 to 12 women in it all the time. I mean, there were a lot of women in it at one time. There were not a lot of eliminations, especially in the early going, and the ring really began to fill up. With the men's, I thought they philosophically did something different, which was, 5 or 6 at a time was really the max, aside from maybe a few times, but that didn't last very long when there were more than that. So just the difference in the booking, I think you have to book it differently, because you don't want one to feel like a carbon copy of the other. And there are a lot of ways. That's the great thing about the Rumble match, is there are a lot of ways in which you can make one feel different than the other. And I thought in a lot of little ways they did that tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Steve in the chat noting, both of us talking about how loaded the women's match was, and the roster in general. And we didn't have Becky, Asuka, or Jade in this match. So I mean, a lot of opportunity for sure for the women going forward. I think I've been critical of the addition of the secondary titles, but I hope that they're on a path to making them feel relevant and making them part of the show. And certainly with 5.5 to 6 hours of television per week, there's no reason that they can't do that. So I'm hoping that we get a little more of that going forward. Want to touch on Alexa Bliss's return. She got a huge reaction, so big that she seemed just genuinely moved by it. Like couldn't stop smiling on her way to the ring. Didn't get a whole lot of shine in the match itself, but I thought that the spots that she did get were nice to get her feet wet, get her back into the swing of things, and certainly clear that the crowd did not forget her and was very, very excited to see her back. I am curious to see what gimmick she's going to portray going forward. It looked like an amalgamation of the old Alexa Bliss and also the Bray Wyatt Alexa Bliss. I'd prefer they get away from that just because we've kind of seen that the Wyatt Six is not having or enjoying much success. I just don't think the magic is there without Bray Wyatt, and I would like to see Alexa Bliss just be herself again. Greg, where do you fall on that?
I tend to agree. I think you've already got Nikki Cross in with the Wyatt Six. I'm not sure adding Alexa Bliss would add a whole lot at this point. I did mention on social media that I think an Alexa Bliss Liv Morgan feud would be kind of interesting, which is what Junaid references here as you posted from the chat. But we didn't really see Alexa Bliss come out. I mean, she was wearing her old gear. She had the Lily doll with her. But other than that, we didn't really see anything to me that would connect her to the Wyatt Six. And if you wanted to go in that direction, I think you would have had her come out already in that presentation. I don't think you would want to say, Alexa Bliss is here and she's kind of normal and she's happy to be here, and then somewhere along the way she moves back to the Wyatt Six. I think that's that wouldn't be the way that I would want to go with it.
Yeah, definitely not. I am intrigued to see where they go with her. Late in the match, one of the negatives I wanted to bring up. It feels to me like they are relying far too heavily on Nia Jax at this point. She had her time in the sun, had a pretty lengthy title run. I thought that she did some fine work along the way, but it wasn't ever at a point where you felt like you could put her in the main event credibly. And to continue down that path with her getting so many consequential eliminations in this match, I mean, for her to have been the one to knock out Belair and Naomi and some others felt a little short-sighted to me. I would not be putting as much weight into her as they are. It feels like it's time to, sort of, I don't want to say demote, but really demote is the word. I think that you need to rotate some more talented in-ring wrestlers to the top, especially as we head into WrestleMania season. So I would have liked to have seen a little less of that. They did go down that same path that they normally do with Nia, where they really have very few stories that they're able to tell with big men and big women in the Rumble matches. And so they always seem to go to the same formula over and over again. They did it with Braun Strowman later in the night, though not as strongly as Jax. I just think that spot where everyone swarms the bigger wrestler and they all get thrown to the side the way that they did with Nia tonight, that's something I would just put a moratorium on for several years. Just set it aside for a bit. But that was only one of the major things I wanted to touch on. As far as Charlotte Flair, I just, the one thing that I came out of this match feeling was that I really hope that there is a plan to present her as a heel, because tonight she really had no clear designation. I mean, they knew that she was going to get cheered coming back from a major injury, not being on TV for a year or more. But Charlotte Flair has really never had a successful babyface run. I find that, when she is a babyface, it winds up hurting both her and the heel that she's working with. I would much prefer that she be in the heel role, whether she decides to face Tiffany Stratton or Rhea Ripley. I don't think that there is any chance that you're going to get Charlotte Flair cheered against Rhea Ripley. And I think the chances are pretty slim against Tiffany Stratton, given how popular she is right now. Greg, what role do you prefer Charlotte be in, and where do you think they're headed with this, given that they didn't really give much of an indication tonight?
Absolutely, she should be a heel, but I'm not confident WWE's learned their lesson in that yet. So I could totally see them trying to push her as a babyface. The Rhea Ripley, Tiffany Stratton. I mean, I don't have a clear feel for that. Certainly, she has a ton of history with Rhea Ripley, especially at WrestleMania, that you could really mine. But then you've got, the up and comer Tiffany Stratton against the wily veteran Charlotte Flair. And that's a story you could tell too. Tiffany, this whole deal with her, and I was on many moons ago, whether it was a SmackDown post show or flagship with Wade Keller, and I really kind of criticized the Tiffany Stratton character in WWE, where she was kind of cowering to Nia Jax and all this, yes. knowing how she played it in NXT and knowing she was this uber confident woman, and then to see her play this subservient role to Nia Jax, I didn't like it. And Wade kind of pushed back a little bit and was like, well, I mean, if this turns her babyface, if she comes out of this as a babyface, kind of makes sense. And so, okay, we get to the turn where she eventually turns, she cashes in Money in the Bank, but it seems like she's still a heel. Like that's kind of how they're positioning her. So that's what I don't really get that. I'm not really sure how they're handling her right now.
I think that there has been a shift in presentation. Not her character work is the same, but I took the fist bump and sort of camaraderie with Rhea Ripley. What was it, a week ago on SmackDown or 2 weeks ago now, as their official signal that she was a babyface now.
Okay. I mean, the words that she said since winning, I mean, that hasn't really struck me as a babyface. So I don't know.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So I just think if maybe you'd lean into that a little harder. So that character, I don't want to say it's a mess right now, but there's still some work to do to find the voice of who Tiffany Stratton is right now. And maybe being paired with a veteran like Charlotte Flair, who's, I mean, who Charlotte Flair is, right? You know what that character is. Maybe that would help define Tiffany Stratton in her role too. So I think there's interest on both sides in terms of, does she face Rhea Ripley? Does she face Tiffany Stratton? I think I could sit here and make an argument for either one.
I think they're both a lot of fun on paper.
Yeah, and if you're arguing that Tiffany is in fact 100% a babyface, you've also got Rhea Ripley as a babyface, so that would indicate to me that you'd want Charlotte Flair to be a heel, unless you were going to go in and do a babyface versus babyface matchup, or I don't know, maybe Tiffany Stratton loses the title between now and WrestleMania, and Charlotte has to face whoever wins it. So that's a possibility as well. But to circle back to your original point, I think Charlotte Flair 100% needs to be heel, but I don't know that WWE Brain Trust agrees with this, because it was clear as day a long time ago that she should be a heel, full stop. And yet they've tried to get her over as a babyface with relatively little success compared to the success they have when she's a heel.
Yeah, for sure. Junaid in the chat, I had just taken the chat down, but was saying that Tiffany and Charlotte could be interesting, and I agree. I mean, I think that there's a story you can tell there. I do think that if they are looking for a real headliner this year, if they want to put women in the main event slot at WrestleMania, which it's been a couple years since they've gone ahead with that, I think that you have a legitimate case with Rhea and Charlotte. That feels like the one match in the women's division right now where you can put it on last at a WrestleMania and feel like it's at that level. But they've got to do work with both of them to get to that level. I mean, the women's division has not been presented in a way that makes you think WrestleMania main event for many, many months now. And a lot of that just has to do with who's been involved at the top of the card. I think getting Rhea Ripley back into that position at the top and warming up some bigger opponents for her is going to be key if they want to go in that direction. But it's hard to predict right now with so many of the men's storylines just completely up in the air. I mean, there's
Mhm.
so many directions that they can go with a number of things, and we're certainly going to get into that. Moving
And
on
to
from
my
the,
point, Brandon, about Tiffany Stratton, we've got disagreement in the chat about whether Tiffany Stratton is a heel or a face. So that's got,
yeah,
kind of
no,
makes my point for me.
yeah, I mean, no question. I took the camaraderie with Rhea as indication that they were considering her a babyface, but I am in full agreement that they have not done enough to firmly establish her in that role by any means. She's still acting, behaving the same way. They're sort of treating her the way that they do Roman Reigns, in that he's a babyface now, but he's the same guy. He's just doing all the things that he used to do. We'll move on from the Women's Royal Rumble. Start to go down the rest of the card here. Before we get too far away from it, though, did want to highlight a super chat from Zach Barber. He brings up the new details in the Janelle Grant lawsuit that imply that both Paul Levesque and Nick Khan were aware that something was going on. Greg, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I do think that it's a better. I don't think that on a premium live event post show that we're going to be able to do justice to what this conversation deserves. I think it's better left for a long form discussion with Wade and whomever is, a guest on the flagship show, where they can discuss it in long form. But it's certainly worth mentioning. I don't want to gloss over or ignore this type of thing. The details are as they were when they were first released, and as more details leak out, are abhorrent. And, I think all of us patently reject, everything that has transpired, that is alleged to have transpired. I don't know what the answer is here. We obviously cannot make a judgment call as to what is going to happen to the likes of Paul Levesque and Nick Khan. I would assume that it won't be satisfactory for the people who are interested in this story and believe that justice should be served. But Greg, I just want to open the floor for you. Anything that you want to mention or add before we continue on with the show itself?
Yeah, I think you put it very well, Brandon. There seem to be a lot of receipts here. If you're someone who first instinct is to doubt the accuser, or take Vince McMahon's side or whatever like that, if you read the brief, if you read what came out, and this is almost a year. Remember, it was last year, right before the Royal Rumble too, that this first came to light, and now another significant portion of this is coming to light again before this year's Royal Rumble.
Actually got blasted by Johnny for talking about it on last year's Rumble post show. I remember that well.
Yeah, it's the details are just disgusting. I mean, I don't know that there's any way to put it, and it does seem to get more and more difficult to talk about the Royal Rumble and talk about Jey Uso going to WrestleMania when this is sort of the backdrop. And so it doesn't mean that, by talking about Jey Uso and Tiffany Stratton, it doesn't mean that we don't care about this or that this doesn't matter or anything like this. It is in fact pretty difficult to act like the people in charge of WWE are on the up and up, when these accusations, if they are to be believed, they would not be. And that goes for Nick Khan, as you mentioned, Paul Levesque, and a lot of other prominent people in very prominent roles who had very prominent roles in WWE. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to read. And I don't know what else to say about it at this point. My heart breaks to read about that stuff, that this happened. I mean, that this even happened, that this was going on, and that so many people apparently knew, and that this stuff was passed around to so many arms of the company. and no one felt comfortable enough to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong, and somebody needs to know what's going on here. That's the kind of environment that was bred under Vince McMahon for so long.
And it goes without saying, I mean, it's a popular phrase, and I think it's pertinent here and anywhere when we discuss tough subjects like this. Like, there's no ethical consumption in media. I think we all know and understand that, and people need to decide for themselves what they are and aren't comfortable with supporting, and why not they are or are not comfortable supporting it. I think that there is an argument to be made for and against continuing to support WWE. I have no qualms with the people who have decided that this is one step too far for them. Absolutely. I also completely understand when people come at it from a point of, hey, this is an entertainment escape for me. It is something that I personally identify with, and I am continuing to support the wrestlers who are not involved in this and who have nothing to do with this and who are just doing their jobs. I think that, you can make that argument all day, and you can make the counter argument. It's going to be a personal decision at the end of the day, and I respect whichever one people choose to make. This is a common thing that comes up in the music world. In the scene that I came up in, there's been a reckoning for a number of years with bands being involved in sexual assault, and you have to decide if you are willing and able to separate art from artist, or if you move on and you disconnect yourself from those artists. And that's a personal thing. Everybody has to make the decision for themselves. It's a conversation that I'm sure will continue to be had here on Torch channels. And I'm sure something that will come up throughout the week with other PWTorch live casts. But just didn't want to move on without bringing it up here. Greg, we can continue on with the show itself here. Second match of the night was for the tag team championships. It was a 2 out of 3 falls match between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, DIY, taking on the Motor City Machine Guns. This was, again, a 2 out of 3 falls match. DIY retaining the championships in just a hair over 14 minutes. Thanks to interference from the Street Profits. Montez Ford, Angelo Dawkins returning after a hiatus. They were in dark clothes. They were in hoodies pulled up over their heads. You weren't supposed to see who they were. Dawkins attacked one of the machine guns with a crutch, allowing DIY to hit meet in the middle and get the win. DIY scored the first fall with kind of a cool sleight of hand trick that they replayed and explained in excruciating detail because they were afraid people would miss it. Motor City Machine Guns got a clean second pinfall to tie it up, and then that meet in the middle ends the match. Greg, what'd you think about this one?
As with most 2 out of 3 falls matches, 3 falls in 14 minutes seems awful short, when if this was on SmackDown, you'd have 1 fall go in 15 minutes. Yeah. So, I think this, and I posted this on social media, I think this is a really good example of how just having good matches these days isn't enough. In a different era, this match would have gotten over big and maybe even would have been the best match on a show. But it was not helped by the fact that it had to follow the Women's Royal Rumble. That was hard. Even with all the downtime in between, the fans still didn't seem really on board, at least at first, with the match. But it was a good match, but you need more. You need, and that's, you need more character. You need more pizzazz. Just being a good match isn't enough. And this was a good match, but it was with 2 teams that are largely pretty vanilla in the landscape of WWE right now. And the fans don't really have a ton to attach themselves to when it comes to these guys. There's no yeet for DOY and the Machine Guns. And if tonight taught us anything, wrestlers need to find their yeet, whatever that is. And so these guys need to find their yeet.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. Steve in the chat saying, can't recall a less impressive 2 out of 3 falls match. And it's unfortunate that it came off that way, because I did think it was a good match, but it felt out of place on this show for starters. It didn't feel like it ever had the heat to really be part of the PLE, and it just never really got out of the blocks. I mean, the crowd is not invested in either of these teams, as unfortunate as it is. I applaud WWE for putting a lot of effort into the tag division on SmackDown lately. They've been getting a lot of TV time. It just hasn't translated. It just hasn't worked yet. And I noted this in my report for PWTorch, and I want to get your take on it, Greg. I was taken aback by how generic and boring these two theme songs were playing back to back. And it got me thinking about what a weakness music is for WWE right now. You look at all of the top wrestlers in WWE, they all have a theme song that people connect with one way or another, be it it's a real, a full-blown theme that is a popular song outside of wrestling, like Cult of Personality for CM Punk, or it's something like Sami Zayn, where it's a theme they've known for years and they can sing along to it, or it's Jey Uso, and he's built in the yeet factor, like you mentioned, Greg.
Yeah.
Everyone who is over in this company in a significant way has a recognizable theme song. You can even extend this to AEW, who I think does a much better job with music right now. They have recognizable themes for their top talent. And WWE just keeps presenting wrestlers with these generic theme songs. You saw it later on tonight in the Rumble. AJ Styles returned, and he got his old theme back because the new one wasn't very good. They're having to go back to what they know works. And for DIY, Ciampa had an incredible theme song in NXT. I don't know why they just don't use that. Gargano had a great theme song in NXT. They could use that. Instead, we're just getting these incredibly generic themes. And then on the side of the Motor City Machine Guns, you have Raise Your Fists with pyro that doesn't sync up because the beats are too fast. Like, they've got to do something better. And I really think that it is part of the reason that a lot of these acts just aren't connecting.
This is one of those things that comes home to roost every Royal Rumble, because at no point in the year is it more obvious that WWE has a problem with its theme songs and with its music than in the Royal Rumble. When you hear these themes for people and none of them draw a reaction because you can't identify that person by their theme the way you used to. And so I absolutely agree that they have a problem. Tony Khan, you mentioned AEW with their themes. Tony Khan is a guy who obviously cares a lot about music and is willing to spend top dollar for music, for either video packages, for the television show themes, for his wrestlers. So that matters to him. You don't get the sense that that matters to WWE. And when you're the number one company and literally money is no object for you, you should be getting the best of the best to put together your theme songs. And you shouldn't accept mediocrity when it comes to that. Because I think it is very important. It's a very important, maybe underrated part of a wrestler's presentation is that theme song. And we know it can be done because you gave some great examples of wrestlers who have awesome themes. Certainly, I mean, as a child of the early 1990s wrestling scene, I mean, those theme songs, Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake, $1 Million Man, I mean, all of those guys, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you knew as two beats into that who that wrestler was that was coming out. You just don't have that these days.
Yeah, and Derek Mitchell in the chat disagreeing with me a bit, saying the AEW themes are lukewarm, and I don't necessarily disagree. My argument is that if AEW is lukewarm, then WWE is ice cold, and I think that's the issue. And I agree, it's a Def Rebel problem. I mean, ever since they have been producing the majority of WWE's themes, there's been
Didn't they drop them recently? Did I read that WWE
thought that
dropped them recently?
I thought that they were or not renewing the contract, one thing or another. But if I don't know if there's just been no changeover yet, and they're still using all Def Rebel themes. But if if they're not, and some of these new themes are whoever they got, they didn't make a good hire this time either. Like that's sort of my point. I mean, people used to get excited about CD releases of WWE themes back in the day, and I realized that not a lot of people are buying physical music anymore, but people are still streaming, and man, I can't imagine most people streaming like 90% of these themes. They're just generic rock tunes with no personality. So that was my biggest takeaway from this match, unfortunately, because the work was good, but there just isn't an amount of intrigue or care right now, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Greg, anything that you want to throw in about this match before we carry on?
No, I think we hit on the most important part of it, and that was the theme music.
I mean, that's not good. That's not.
No, it's not.
We do have some VIP callers on the line, ready to come in. Sean, I am gonna bring you in for more of kind of a full scale rundown here as we get later on through the show. So I'm gonna tag in Andy from Houston right now before I bring you in. Andy, thanks so much.
I'm not ready yet.
Andy, you're not ready? That's
no. I'm not in a position to talk yet, but I figured I'd join here.
Cool. I will. I'll come back to you then. All right. So we're not bringing in Andy quite yet. But what we will do is talk a bit about the WWE Championship match. The last bout before the Men's Royal Rumble, where I think we're going to spend the majority of our time. Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, ladder match for the undisputed WWE title. This one goes just over 25 minutes. Cody Rhodes retains the WWE Championship in what I thought was a fun match. I mean, an appropriate resolution to this feud. I think that they have worked very, very hard to put Kevin Owens in a position to be a credible challenger. Even if it didn't feel like he was going to win the championship, WWE has really struggled over these 300 days with Cody Rhodes as champion to find him top-end opponents and to give him matches that felt worthy of a main event. And I wondered if they could get there with Kevin Owens, and it felt like at the start of the match tonight, when the bell rang and these two were standing opposite each other and the crowd rose to their feet in anticipation, I thought, okay, they got there. Like they got what they needed to out of this. And so I think that is a good sign that we saw some prestige to this feud, especially near the end. They brawled through the crowd back to ringside. We're hitting each other with the little ladder, which, I thought McAfee made a little bit too much of a joke out of. But by and large, I thought they did a good job telling the story there. Another really good instance of WWE using blood sparingly to great effect. Kevin Owens gets busted open late in the match. They really hone in on the camera shot, showing the blood, pouring from the cut above his eye. And they've been doing this on rare occasions where they feel like the situation warrants it. This felt like one of those situations, and I thought they got, good benefit out of it. Derek in the chat saying Kevin Owens is Mr. Royal Rumble. They beat him over almost every year in a title match. And that is true. I mean, Roman Reigns multiple times, now Cody Rhodes. Seems like Owens is never in the Rumble match itself. He's always kind of the go-to guy to take the fall in the title match leading up to WrestleMania. But I thought that this was a good cap on what has been Cody Rhodes' most personal and interesting story post Roman Reigns. So a thumbs up for me overall. Greg, take it away.
I liked it. It had the level of danger that I think is necessary in ladder matches to really sell that stipulation. And certainly the finish was appropriate. I don't want to make in AEW, he would have popped right back up, sort of joke, but I'm just glad that Kevin Owens stayed down after going headfirst through a ladder. So let me just say that. But yeah, the blood, as you said, added to it a little bit. Sami Zayn and the kind of whose side is he on intrigue that came with him coming out is going to be something to watch going forward. Him and Owens always seem to end up together somehow.
Yep.
Whether it's on opposite sides or on the same side. So where will they end up heading into WrestleMania this year is the big question that comes out of this match right now. So, I'm interested to see certainly what Cody Rhodes does next. May have something to do with John Cena. That was kind of the speculation that had Cena won the Rumble that he would face Cody Rhodes, but there's nothing that says that can't still happen. So I thought it was really good. Certainly better than the other non-Rumble match on the show. And I thought it was memorable in the way that it played out.
Yeah, Owens has had a lot of these slots. I mean, Derek in the chat bringing it up a little while ago. I'll highlight it here. He's 1-6 in title matches at the Rumble, losing to Dean Ambrose, defeating Roman in 2017, loses to AJ in 18, losing to Roman in 21 and 23, loses to Logan Paul, and then loses to Cody. So Owens is definitely the go-to guy for this situation at the Rumble, and I think largely he's always delivered. I mean, looking back, I think, running down the list of all those matches, all of them were pretty good, which is what you want when you've got a card that is very clearly being anchored by two Rumble matches with big stakes for WrestleMania. You want a title match that is going to keep people invested, but not necessarily one where the crowd is going to get too upset if the challenger doesn't walk away with the title. And I think Owens has kind of been in that role for a while now. He has become really Mr. Reliable for this company in a lot of ways. He's really an unsung hero for WWE in so many fashions. And I think, again, this was a good showing for Cody. I mean, Cody has not had a lot of really good stuff to sink his teeth into as WWE champion. And I think that this was overall the best story that they've told with him to date since holding that title. And this was a good cap to that. I hope that we're done with the Winged Eagle title for now. I mean, as much as I love that championship, I do think that having Owens carry it around, it made sense for the angle, but beyond what we saw tonight, it just doesn't. I would hope that they put it back to retirement. But yeah, a lot of questions to be answered coming out of here. Where does Sami Zayn lie? Obviously, his participation in the Rumble this year didn't really feel all that consequential, so it does feel like he is going to be moved into whatever is coming out of this, be it with Owens or with Cody in some way, as a means to get, to whatever Cody's going to do at WrestleMania. Sammy could be a stopgap there. Number of different directions that they could go. But it is certainly interesting to see what they're going to do going forward. And yeah, Greg, like you had mentioned, I thought there was an appropriate level of danger in this for being a ladder match. But they didn't go overboard at any point. So yeah, a positive situation overall, and I think they put Cody in a good position going forward. Mm-hmm. All right, we have got one match left to talk about, and I do assume it will take up the majority of our time. I did get a note though from Andy; he is ready to come on the show now. So Andy, I'm bringing you back in. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I just started listening in not too long ago, so I have no idea what you guys have covered. If you say you have one last match to talk about, is it the Men's Royal Rumble or is it?
It is, yeah. We went right in order. We saved the Men's Rumble for last because I figured we'd spend the most time on it.
It was interesting to see how things shaped up at the very end for the Men's Royal Rumble. I almost wish Logan Paul had won, just because we haven't had a heel Royal Rumble winner since it seems like Triple H and what was it, 2000?
Oh man.
Or was that Vince McMahon in '99? I just know that having a Royal Rumble winner be a heel has been a very, very rare occurrence, but it seems like it would be a good way to turn Gunther face if he were to face Logan Paul at WrestleMania. But I guess we have to deal with a retread of Jey Uso's third time the charm situation. Won't this be
Greg,
the third time he's faced Gunther?
I believe it is. Greg, it seems, just based on indications in the chat, people that have been following along with the post show, that Jey has already indicated that he is aiming for Gunther. It would seem like that's the obvious move. And as Andy kind of brought up, it is certainly a retread. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it does make the most sense. Gunther just went out and cut that promo on Jey, basically calling him the mascot of WWE and things like that. Now, Jey has this Royal Rumble win in his pocket, and he can go back to Gunther and say, you think I'm a mascot? Well, I'm going to challenge you for the title. I'm going to beat you for that title. And boom, away we go. So, yeah, he's lost to him before, but that does make the potential win all the more sweet. I think there might be some reservations about going with Jey Uso in a major WrestleMania match, especially considering the Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, much hyped WrestleMania match was one of the major disappointments of last year's card. So, maybe Jey is motivated to extinguish that from people's memories a little bit. But Jey versus Gunther has a lot more storyline possibilities, I think, than Jey versus Cody, which is not to say that Jey versus Cody has zero. I mean, there's that whole bloodline and Jay's association with them and Cody's battles with them leading up to the last two WrestleManias, right? So you could pick at that a little bit if you wanted to, but I think when you've got Roman and Solo doing their thing and their bloodlines battling each other, to have Jey and Cody fighting over kind of like a sub-bloodline storyline, I'm not sure that that's very helpful for what should be your, potentially WrestleMania main event. I think there's a lot more to dig into with Jey versus Gunther.
Yeah, it does feel like if that's the direction they're going, and it does seem like it, just based on the history that's already there and what Jey has indicated on the post show. I do worry that it's going to suffer from really feeling like an undercard match. I mean, if you just run down the list of sort of stuff that they've got in the chamber here, I mean, you're going to have Cody Rhodes title defense, whatever that may be. You have Punk and Seth maybe still involved with each other. Cena could be a challenger for Cody, or he could be facing Jacob Fatu. They certainly laid the groundwork for that in the Rumble tonight. So there's so many matches involving the top men on the card. Roman Reigns, we don't know, Reigns has been teased as being a potential opponent for Fatu, but also could be involved in Punk and Seth and whatever they're doing now. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's hard to imagine Jey and Gunther feeling like a main event match, knowing how many big names there are to fill things out. So yeah, it's a tough scenario, and I'm interested to see how they play it, how they book it, and how they make it feel like it's a major selling point of the WrestleMania card. Andy, I wanted to highlight Derek in the chat coming through with the historical information for us. The last heel to win the Rumble was Triple H in 2016. I had forgotten about that one. He won the title from Roman Reigns. The Rumble that year was a title match. Now, I would add a caveat to that and just saying that like Triple H was the heel, but like very clearly favored with the crowd because everyone hated Roman Reigns at that point. So that is worth noting. But Triple H did win that year and was officially a heel. But go ahead, Andy. Anything else you want to bring up from tonight?
I screamed at the TV when Logan Paul eliminated Punk because that was just a very deflating moment. And so I had to recalculate. Yeah, I had to recalibrate who I wanted to win the Rumble at that point. And
Yeah.
at that point, I thought Cena winning the Rumble would have been an ideal main event situation because he could wrestle against Gunther and lose. So, putting over a world champion on his way out the door in his retirement year. But I guess in the WWE's mind, they need to elevate Jey with the Rumble win more than they need to, I guess, build WrestleMania matches with the Rumble that seem main event worthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, I think that the one drawback, and I was kind of thinking along the same lines that you were, in the sense that I thought that I thought that what we were kind of seeing was a win for Cena at that point. When Punk got eliminated, it really felt like it was Cena's match to lose. And I kept thinking about how careful WWE has been with the booking in recent months, and how Cena was very adamant about pointing out that it was really unlikely he could win a match. Very unlikely he could win the title, unlikely he could win the Rumble, but he was going to try. But he also hadn't won a match in 2,000 something days or whatever it was. And it felt like they would have been telegraphing things a little bit too much, if they had gone that direction. And I felt like they might be trying to pull something else here. They might be trying to swerve us in some way or another, because for Cena to have gone through all that in that return promo only to then just win the thing, it would have felt a bit like a slap in the face to some of the other wrestlers, but also like they had telegraphed it. So I'm glad they went in a different direction. I do still think that Cena has a path to a title match at WrestleMania if that's really where they want to go. But I also think that there are stories they can tell with Cena that don't involve the title, and that might be better at this point. I mean, I think that you could save a theoretical title match with Cena for later on in this run, because remember, he is sticking around for the whole year. So I think that you could do something like that at a show like Money in the Bank or SummerSlam or something of that nature.
Yeah, and I know that they've advertised him for the Elimination Chamber, so it's always possible that he's the sixth entrant in the Elimination Chamber. So he has the least amount of ring time, so they can continue protecting his body. It was kind of funny to me the way he got knocked out of the ring in the safest possible way. And then contrast that with Punk, who I thought he broke his tailbone the way he landed on his butt. That was scary.
Can you imagine if we had another devastating Punk injury during the Royal Rumble? Greg?
I thought Rollins almost crushed Roman Reigns' skull with that first stomp, because he landed both feet on Roman's head on the ground, and it was just, I guess, the grace of Samoan skulls being so thick, I guess, that they still did that stare spot afterwards.
Yeah, there's certainly some, I don't think anybody was being unprofessional, but there is certainly some professional, healthy animosity between Rollins and Reigns and Punk.
So, do you think they're building a triple threat between the three? Because with McIntyre not even being eliminated so much earlier, it makes it seem like whatever plans they have for him at WrestleMania may not involve those other three. I don't know. I'd rather have a 3-way than a 4-way.
It certainly felt like that was a possibility coming out of this. I'm a little curious as to how you would set that up, because if it's not a title match, what purpose is a triple threat serving? I'm not saying that they won't do it or that they can't do it. I just think that it's sort of a lame setup in a way. I could also see the odd man out being the one to challenge Cody too, because Cody still needs a challenger. And we're talking like Cena could be that guy, but it might not be Cena. And if it's not Cena, then Cody still needs a top guy to challenge him. Greg, where do you fall on that?
I mean, to me, I think you could get a Punk Rollins singles match at WrestleMania. I'm not sure you need Roman involved there. Maybe WWE thinks, well, we did Punk and Rollins at Saturday night's main event. We did a clean finish. We don't want to run that back. So throw Roman Reigns in there. He's connected to both CM Punk, and you could build the intrigue to, okay, what is this request that Punk is eventually going to make? What is this favor that he's going to ask of Paul Heyman for teaming with the Reigns squad at Survivor Series? So that question hangs over things. Obviously, the Seth Rollins Roman Reigns animosity is still very fresh in the mind of Seth Rollins. Maybe the only guy that he hates more than CM Punk at this point. So there is a thread that is common amongst the three to where you could very easily get to a triple threat. I don't know. That would seem to be kind of a letdown for Roman Reigns. I mean, you would think that you would want him involved in the bloodline in some way, because you've got, okay, if Roman Reigns isn't involved with the heel bloodline, what is Solo Sikoa doing? What is Jacob Fatu doing? What is Tama Tonga doing? You would think that they would have, because so much time has been spent on them on SmackDown, you would think that they would have something prominent to do at WrestleMania. And the obvious thing is something with Roman Reigns. But I don't know. I mean, there's still a lot. I think the Royal Rumble did a lot to jumble up the pieces for WrestleMania season, and the next few months is going to spend teasing them back out again.
Yeah, I would definitely say the Royal Rumble did not clear up anything in terms of who was going to be in what matchup and in what order of prominence. We just know that Jey is likely going to wrestle Gunther because they have the strongest storyline tie between Jey and either title holder. And then the women's Royal Rumble was also, I'm sure y'all have talked about that. I'm curious if the other callers have expressed dismay at Charlotte being pushed to the moon already in her return. It's just, this is definitely going to be a Royal Rumble that I enjoyed the matches when they were happening, but the outcomes were just lackluster for me personally.
Yeah, I think it's been a mixed bag on Charlotte. I think that there are people who are viewing her as one of the few women who make sense in a main event spot in at the WrestleMania level, and then there are also those who are not the biggest fans of Charlotte and are tired of seeing her in that role, especially when first night back she's catapulted right into a main event. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I think that I would like to see more focus on some of the other women. I also understand that both Tiffany and Charlotte and Rhea and Charlotte feel like big, interesting matches on paper and could be very good from both an in-ring standpoint and a storytelling standpoint. But what Greg and I were really discussing earlier in the show before you joined, Andy, was just our sort of insistence that Charlotte really needs to be a heel in this situation. And Greg was mentioning that he's just not sure that WWE is there with her, that they have enough example of her as a babyface to see that it doesn't work, and that she's much more conducive to that heel character and much more beneficial to herself, the company, and her opponent when she's a heel. But they've really, really tried to put her over as a babyface consistently, and I think that is our primary concern: is what role she plays. Because I think that Charlotte's ability to be an effective character and to move the needle and draw money is largely predicated on her designation, and I don't think she does any of those things as a babyface.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And also, just considering her WrestleMania history outside of the triple threat with Becky and Ronda, I feel like she needs to put, whether she wrestles Rhea or Tiffany, she needs to put the other champion over, because I'm tired of seeing her go to WrestleMania and defeat someone. Just like when she faced Ripley last time she won the Royal Rumble, that really bothered the hell out of me. And then just giving her the belt in a match with either one of them at WrestleMania, to me it really just shows a regression in the progress that the women's wrestling scene has made in WWE over the past 5-10 years.
Yeah, I totally get that perspective, and I think there's a lot of people in the chat that agree. My only pushback comes just from the fact that, and this is more of an indictment of WWE than anything, is the fact that they haven't done a great job at building other people to the level that Charlotte has existed in for a long period of time. And that's on them. I mean, I think that there are other women who are deserving of that spot, but you can't just throw them in that spot. You've got to do the work to build them there, and they haven't done it. And so what happens then as a result is we're kind of left with these retreads where we get people like Charlotte consistently at the top. Greg, I know we've discussed this quite a bit, but anything you want to add to this discussion?
Not really. I mean, Charlotte's been at the top for a long time. Whenever she's on TV, she's one of the top women's performers. And this complaint is really nothing new. It's not specific to Charlotte necessarily. We've had the same conversations about John Cena when he was on top for years. We've had the same conversations about Randy Orton over the years when he had been on top, certainly Triple H. So this conversation isn't necessarily even about Charlotte. It's just about someone who has been on top for a really long time. Sometimes it feels like we're just kind of exhausted with that personality and with that person being on top, and it doesn't feel like there's anything new. I mean, think about how many John Cena, Randy Orton matches we sat through when they were both on top. My only argument to that would be, I think there are enough new women in prominent positions on SmackDown and Raw to where there are some fresh matchups for Charlotte conceivably, and even a not so fresh matchup, which would be Rhea Ripley, I still think carries a lot of intrigue because, Rhea's in a very different position now than she was the first time she fought Charlotte Flair. And even the second time when she won, I think she's even in a different position now than when she was then. And there's a lot there to explore from a storyline standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, anything else you wanted to add before I let you go?
Just that I don't ever want to see Kevin Owens take an Alabama slam on a ladder again. He has taken some ridiculous risks with ladders that you could see throughout that match, where it seemed like it damaged him more in the giving than it did Cody in the taking. And I just don't ever want to see a wrestler in a position where it looks like they die from a boilerplate spot that everyone feels obligated to do because of props like ladders. So they could have gotten where they needed to go in that match without having something that severe, in my mind.
Yeah, my hope is that it was safer than it looked. I mean, obviously that ladder was gimmicked in a way to break the way that it did for Owens when he landed on it, but the angle at which he came down was obviously quite concerning, and the way that his body folded like an accordion when he went down was it was a nasty angle. And I'm not surprised that Owens wanted to take that bump, was willing to take that bump to really sell the story. These two beat each other up at the end of this match. I mean, the final 5 minutes were rough. I mean, they were really going for it, and I think that they felt like they needed to really sell the seriousness of this story. Greg, anything you want to add there?
No, I agree, Brandon. I think, our reaction to these is the desired reaction WWE wants some of these spots. And they're professionals. They know how to, and I'm not saying this happens all the time, but they know how to make things look dangerous without it being as dangerous as it looks to the performer. So hopefully this was one of those situations.
Yeah, definitely. Andy, thanks so much for calling in. Certainly great to have you, and we'll hope you continue to listen here as we finish discussing the show.
Thank you very much. Y'all take care.
Yeah, you too. All right, Greg. So we're in the midst of the men's Royal Rumble discussion here. We do still have Sean to bring on, and I'm going to do that in just a second. We've also got Dr. Doom in the waiting room here. So VIP members, thanks so much for joining us here tonight, and for joining us in the chat as well. It has been a very, very lively chat, and that is awesome. So to run down, since I've done it for the rest of the show, keeping with the format, we've already been talking in detail about the men's Royal Rumble, but it was, of course, the final match of the evening. Jey Uso wins in 80 minutes, 13 seconds. I think that this might have been the longest Royal Rumble ever. They went an hour and 20 minutes, which certainly felt, for my money, like the longest. I know that Gunther holds the record for longest match appearance at like an hour and 11 minutes. So I think that might have been the record prior to, or right around there, because I know he was a finalist. So they went an hour and 20 minutes. It's Jey Uso winning this. John Cena, the final participant with Jey. They battle out onto the apron, and it looks like Cena's going to win it. Jey hits him with a super kick. Cena is holding on by a thread. He's got one foot and one arm dangling over the edge of the ring. He catches himself, pulls himself back to safety, and hoists Jey onto his shoulders for an attitude adjustment to win. But Jey slides down Cena's back into the ring and bumps Cena off the apron to win the Royal Rumble. I was shocked. I don't know when the last time I was this surprised by a result in a major match in pro wrestling.
The only thing I could think of with Royal Rumble was Shinsuke Nakamura, maybe. And I don't think it was nearly on this level either. I think this was more surprising.
Yeah, and I'd have to go back, and I don't remember like what the final situation looked like with Shinsuke. Was it Roman? Did he eliminate Roman?
I don't remember the details.
Yeah. I remember feeling like there was a good possibility that he could win, but it didn't feel like a foregone conclusion. This was
definitely on another plane.
Yeah, like if Cena had won, no surprise. If Punk had won, no surprise. If Reigns had won, minimal surprise, but really very little surprise.
He's like Charlotte. When he's in it, he's got a chance.
Yeah. I mean, Seth, Drew, I don't think they're going to win, but if they did, I wouldn't be like, just completely shocked. But Jey Uso, I was shocked. So I mean, kudos to them for pulling off a surprise. When I was growing up, I would watch these Royal Rumbles, and so often I would not be attuned to what WWE was doing, in the sense that I was a fan of the counterculture. I didn't want to see, more John Cena. So, Attitude Era, I was pretty much along for the ride. Whatever they're going to give me, I'm going to take. But Ruthless Aggression Era, I was very much like unhappy with the majority of the product. And so often I would be just so disappointed in Royal Rumbles, because I would talk myself into these situations where hope against hope, maybe they'll put over a guy who's on the up and up, who is, upcoming. He's the next man up.
Daniel Bryan, cough.
Exactly. And it's not just going to be like another John Cena win or another Randy Orton win or what have you. But maybe this year it's going to be, I don't know, like Christian, for example. Like I was a big Christian fan.
Mm-hmm.
So this felt like that. This felt like just totally out of left field, but a guy who is unquestionably beloved by the fans. The fans ate it up. Mm-hmm. They were, fully on board with the idea of Jey Uso from the start. And I think that speaks to the connection that Jey has built, that he could win this match amongst a crowded field, including John Cena, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, the list goes on. And the crowd was not only not disappointed, but ecstatic. Mm-hmm. And that says something for what Jey Uso has become and where they've been able to build him and where he has been able to build himself. Now, we've seen a lot of comments in the chat throughout the night, people disappointed in this result, not necessarily because they dislike Jey Uso, but because of what it means for WrestleMania. And I completely understand that take. And it's actually the first thought that I had after the bell rang. Like, we're going to do Jey Uso and Gunther again? I think that they are banking more on the moment, Jey Uso getting his big title win at WrestleMania, than they are having a stellar knockout match. Darrell in the chat mentioning what they're doing with Jey is what should have happened with Daniel Bryan. And Greg, you kind of mentioned Daniel Bryan being a guy that really should have, had his moment in the sun at WrestleMania. This is a really interesting direction to take, because I don't think that this is going to be a main event match. And as the chat has pointed out, as we're well aware, you don't have to close either show to, be considered a main event at WrestleMania anymore.
Main event is a very fluid term when it comes to WrestleMania.
Absolutely. Especially now that there's 2 nights. I could see this opening night 1. I could see this opening night 2. I don't see it closing either night, and that's okay. I think that they are going for the moment here, a big moment, and I think they're going to get it. I think that crowd at WrestleMania is going to pop huge if Jey Uso wins that title. And I cannot imagine that they are going to do anything else, because you're not going to feed Jey to Gunther 3 times over after giving him the Royal Rumble win, are you?
No, I would imagine not. I can't imagine why you would do that. What does Gunther gain by beating Jey Uso again? And certainly Jey Uso has a lot to lose, even though he wins the Rumble. And, that's something you can't take away. It's something that's always going to be talked about in association with Jey Uso, no matter what happens from here on out. I mean, you can't take this away from him. But it certainly doesn't help Jey Uso to be in a prominent position at WrestleMania and then lose. So it's got to be a slam dunk win and it should be. I mean, if you're going to put Jey Uso in that position against Gunther, he should beat Gunther. And I think part of the surprise tonight as well was Gunther had teased a match with Goldberg. He had badmouthed Goldberg at one of the recent PLEs, and people saw that as, okay, let's keep that in the back of our mind for down the line, right? And I think there was this belief that Gunther versus Goldberg, potentially Goldberg's retirement match, could happen at WrestleMania, which would then take Jey Uso out of the picture. So, now that you have Jey Uso versus Gunther, where, if anywhere, does Goldberg fit in? Does he face Gunther somewhere else? Does he face someone else at WrestleMania? That's up in the air as well.
Yeah, for sure. Darrell in the chat raising the point, thinking that the fans could turn on the show if they don't let Jey main event. I don't think that would be the case. I think that
It's going to take a
WWE
lot for this fan base today to turn on
Yeah.
this show. This is not a fan base that is waiting for something to
No.
turn on in the way that it had been in years past.
Yeah, they are very much enamored with the product that WWE is putting out right now. It would take something pretty considerable for them to turn. I don't even necessarily know that Jey Uso losing would be enough to turn the crowd, but it wouldn't be great. I mean, it would certainly be a downer of a moment, especially at WrestleMania. But I just think that WWE has this crowd, you know, where they want them. I don't think that they're going to see a lot of backlash, regardless of the booking decisions, with very few exceptions. Greg, we've got a couple of VIP callers on the line here. I do want to bring in regular guest Sean Plichta, add him in and get his take on everything. And I also want to bring Dr. Doom on here in a couple of minutes to see what he wants to talk about as well. Sean, first of all, thanks for hanging with us throughout the show. We'll definitely get your thoughts and run down the whole thing here in a bit, but add your take here on the close of the show, Jey Uso winning, before I bring Dr. Doom on for his comments.
Yeah, you guys talked a lot about it. First of all, I was obviously shocked. Not in a good way. This is not against Jey Uso personally. I have nothing against Jey Uso. I think he's done a lot to build his fan base up. You know, he does have the crowd. He does get to walk through the crowd, which does help to build the momentum he has, which nobody talks about that, but it is true. Nobody gets that. If people got that, I think a lot of people would be over. No offense to him. He's made it work. People love him. I do. I respect what he's done with the bloodline, everything he's done with that story. I think it's been really, really fun, really, really interesting. The last three, for me, I was just very down on. I really thought they would have the main characters that we've been all thinking had a chance to win. And I just think, I'll tell you one thing, I did not want Cena to win. So to me, Jey was an upgrade over Cena immediately. I thought Cena in the Rumble tonight was terrible. I hated every part of what he did. He sat around forever. A lot of people sat around, like Jason said in the chat a while back. The selling and laying out for long periods of time. I know it's part of the Rumble. Greg, I know you're going to, and I get it. It was too much in the men's Rumble tonight. It was way too much. It was way too overdone.
It was Cena, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And Cena, I just don't, again, I respect what Cena's done over his entire career. I respect it. I've been a defender for many, many years. I've said this over and over and over again. You know, I don't want Cena. I was glad Cena didn't win because and he can still win the chamber, of course, and go on to face Cody at WrestleMania. But I just don't want Cena in the main event. He takes nothing seriously anymore. He makes it look like a joke, and he's just going through the motions. And I don't want that in my main event right now. I just don't. WWE's in a good place. I think Cena's going to hurt that. I think some other things in the Royal Rumble, the match itself, I didn't like was I thought Fatu coming in looked really good. I thought he was very strong when he first came in. I know they're building the more of the stuff with him and Strowman, but him getting eliminated by Strowman was so stupid. Right after, then Cena eliminates him right after that. That's just, come on, man. We have a strong guy in Fatu who we're really trying to put over, and you have Braun Strowman eliminate him that early in the Rumble where he could do a lot of cool things, which he did a little bit before. I just don't think Strowman eliminating Fatu really, I don't know, it just doesn't do anything for me. And it just kind of took me out of it a little bit. And then seeing it just eliminating him the way he did, I was like, you know, I just didn't understand that. I thought Sammy, I thought was going to come out a lot earlier. So I was surprised he came in later and then we really didn't see anything from him. He kind of was in and then he just kind of was out, seemed like pretty quickly. So that was kind of, I didn't really understand that. And yeah, I thought this really was going to be Punk's year. I was, you know, I haven't been a fan for a while, but I got invested back in what he's done. They can still tell a story. He can still win the chamber. You know, again, the chamber is going to be a fun show because we still don't know what's going to happen, like we were talking about. The men's Rumble really disappointed me overall. I really didn't like a lot of what they did, and I'm willing to let it play out because I'm one of those people. But I was not a fan of a lot of what they did. And Jey, again, he's a good dude. I like what he's done. We saw what he did in a WrestleMania match last year, and it was not good. and we have to ban super kicks or stop them for at least limit them for a long period of time because they just do way too many super kicks. It's just way overdone, and I'm not trying to diss everything about the show because the show was fun in a lot of ways, but the Men's Rumble was a disappointment for me. I was kind of bummed afterwards.
Yeah, I think there's so many moving parts to this match, and there's so much that I did like about it, and Sean, there's a lot of points that you bring up that I agree with. You know, there were moments in this match where I was like, man, like they really went down the wrong path here, and I felt similarly to you with Braun Strowman, for example. Like, as I brought up when we started the show, talking about the Women's Rumble, talking about how I thought that they just went too heavy on Nia Jax, who they've been pushing for an extended period of time.
Right.
She had her run with the championship. You know, she did an admirable job with it. But we're in WrestleMania season when you really need the top talents to really step up and carry you to these major matches. That's not something that Nia has ever done or is able to do, and that's fine. She serves her role very well. But for her to have been knocking women out left and right tonight, I thought was the wrong move. The same way that I thought it was disappointing to have Braun Strowman be the one to knock out Jacob Fatu. I know that somebody's going to eliminate Fatu, but for Strowman to have been the guy to have done it, I realize they're in a feud, but I was also pretty vehemently against Strowman winning that match by disqualification last week. Like, I just think that Fatu is worth spending the cachet you have on Braun on Fatu. I think that you pull that trigger. Whatever you've built Braun Strowman to be, his reason for existing is to make guys like Fatu look
good. Yep.
And they just haven't done that. I mean, yes, he beat him up, but Strowman won the match. Strowman eliminated him tonight. And so they're going to have another match. I just would have preferred something different there. But there's so many different talking points to go through. I do want to bring Dr. Doom in here before we get too far down the rabbit hole. Dr. Doom, thanks so much for joining us here on Wrestling Night in America. What do you got for us? Maybe not.
Dr. Doom, come on, that's a cool name. You gotta have something for us. Come on. Technology can be a pain in the what sometimes.
Yeah, I can see him. So I can see Dr. Inside Baseball here. I can see him on my screen down below, but I cannot see him when I add him to the chat. So I will give it a shot here again in a couple of minutes. But Sean, go ahead and hit any points you wanted to make about the rest of the show before we continue to hone in here on the Men's Rumble.
Yeah, so going to the Women's Rumble, I'll just go back to the beginning. The Women's Rumble, I really enjoyed a lot, actually. I thought it was – I actually thought it was better than last year, Brandon. I know you said you thought last year's was better. I thought this year's was a little better. I mean, yes, the winner wasn't as exciting as, because we all kind of figured Charlotte was going to win. And I was okay with it. I mean, I'm worried about the Tiffany-Charlotte match itself because of the character alignment and where they both are as characters and where they will be, I think, as characters going into that match. But, Charlotte is a big star. I did worry when she came in, and she came in, did her chops, and I don't need any more really Charlotte chops. I just think they don't look good. We don't hear anything. There's not much there. Kind of the same movements that she has, kind of the same, I just felt the same things from her from before. Now, again, we haven't heard her talk really on an actual promo yet in the ring. I really just want her to be her own person and lean into some of that. But I thought the match itself was very good, even though Nia, probably did a little too much. I didn't need her to do all that she did, but I like the work that Nia's done. I thought Jordynne Grace, I was expecting, I would have actually liked her to win. I knew they weren't going to go that route, but I would have loved it because can be a really big star, and she still can. But I thought she got eliminated a little too early. I forget who eliminated her, but it just seemed very just out of the blue and just kind of way too early. I would have liked to see her in there a little bit longer. I feel like she was in there last year a little bit longer than she was this year, which was a little disappointing. I thought the stuff with Bianca, I was expecting Jade because I didn't know when she was coming back from her injury. So I thought she would actually come back tonight and kind of play into that story with them. But Bianca, at least they teased her going heel. I think Bianca needs to go heel very soon. I know it's a very interesting topic, but Bianca is a face that isn't doing it for me personally, and I just want her to change her role and be a little bit different to where she could build to a bigger match down the line. I'm trying to think who else was good. I love Roxanne did. So I think there were some people that moved in. Lash was impressive for what she did. I thought Chelsea, like you said, was fun where she was going. But so I thought the match was good. Charlotte, we'll see where they go with that. I mean, the promos have got to be good from her. And then with the KO and Cody, I thought the match was really, really good. I think it, like you said, it did look worse when watching it live. I mean, I hope it was pretty safe because it did look wonky. It was wild. I mean, they did those crazy spots were scary but fun at the same time. I mean, I was like, man, they got me invested in what they were doing, and I just think KO, obviously didn't need to win, but I'm curious to see where Cody goes from here. I mean, I love his character. I love what he's done, and I just thought overall it was a good show. Just the ending, I think, really trying to be optimistic, but it did kind of bum me out a little bit. But again, I want to see where the chamber plays out in these next few weeks, just kind of see how they play. But I thought it was still a really fun show and really worth investing 4 hours of my time in. So it was good.
Yeah, there's so many threads coming out of this, and so much of I've been scrolling through here in the chat, and a lot of the chat has just been speculation about where they're headed as far as the Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. And on one hand, I think that's a great thing because you've got people hooked. People do not have a good sense one way or the other what direction they're going, and there's some ideas and plans that I think are better than others, but there are also a number of situations that I would be pretty happy with personally, and that I think could feel like big WrestleMania programs. But I'm intrigued. I mean, this is a pretty stark contrast to last year's WrestleMania season, where I think a lot of us were really excited about WrestleMania season last year, but we had a pretty clear indication of where things were headed fairly early on. I mean, the question was essentially, is The Rock going to Bigfoot Cody Rhodes or not? I mean, other than that, we pretty much knew the direction we were headed. And this year, outside of Gunther and Jey Uso coming out of the Royal Rumble, it really feels like it could go any direction. I mean, Greg, am I right there? Like, does this feel decidedly different already from last year's build?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this earlier that they're just we're a lot less clear coming out of this Royal Rumble than even going in, I think, as to what the directions are. Jey Uso versus Gunther is one you can probably take to the bank, especially because Jey mentioned challenging Gunther on the post show tonight. But really, that's the only one that you could write in stone. I think John Cena versus Cody Rhodes, probably. John Cena also mentioning on the post show that he's going to be in the Elimination Chamber. So I would say maybe he wins that, faces Cody Rhodes. But then you've got just a bunch of guys who are all kind of at the same level on the pecking order. Your Drew McIntyres, your Roman Reigns, your Seth Rollins, your CM Punks, you can throw guys like Damian Priest in there, guys who are going to be in a prominent position on WrestleMania. You can't fit the square peg into the round hole right now. And that round hole will become a square hole after a few months, and you'll be able to fit the square peg into the square hole, and it'll all make sense.
Right.
But right now, it's hard to figure out, which is okay. And I think more, if we were in this situation 10 years ago, I think there would be a lot of frustration. There would be a lot of doubt about WWE getting to a satisfactory spot for WrestleMania. But the confidence is high in Triple H and this particular writing team that they're going to take us on a journey over the next few months, and the destination is going to make sense. And we have confidence in that in ways that we didn't have confidence in that under Vince McMahon for so long.
For sure.
Yeah.
There are so many ways that they could fumble this, and that I would be pretty confident they would fumble if Vince McMahon were in charge. But the current crop of creative has certainly shown a proficiency to book well and book smartly and book in ways that make a lot of sense. And I hope that that's what we're headed for, that we're headed for another WrestleMania season where they make sense of this stuff. I mean, they got into some trouble last year with the Rock and Roman stuff. And I don't know that all of that was necessarily their fault. I think they were throwing some curveballs along the way, but this is set up a little bit differently. And I think they have a lot of avenues to go down. I am going to try to bring Dr. Doom in here one more time, see if whatever we were having for issues has been fixed. Dr. Doom, do we have you this time?
There we go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
My bad. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I guess
I think something was going on the camera end too, because I could see you down below in my backstage window, but every time I put you up on the screen, it was just black. So
yeah, so I used to teach, like, you know, I think Mr. Parks, I think you teach also, but and during Zoom, but I haven't used it in so long that my settings were just messed up. It's been like a couple of years. So I do apologize about that. But I guess, and very nice to talk to you guys. You know, I've been with the Torch for I think 20 years now. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys about the show. Yeah, when my friends were underwhelmed, I normally don't watch everything live. Like I watch it behind, like kind of everything. But I was watching this live with a couple of my friends in Philadelphia, and yeah, they were just underwhelmed by like the outcomes and the entire match. And I guess one of my overarching points, my main point is that, you know, the business is doing well, and you know, Triple H area and everything is going good. But I kind of feel sometimes like it's like resting on your laurels to a certain extent. Let's just have Jey Uso win the match and it's popular right now. But if that's is that short term or is that long term? Is what I'm sort of getting out of it. Like I do understand Jey Uso's very popular, but that seems sort of me like LA Knight or like something that won't be that popular 6 months from now, you know. And I like Jey Uso a lot actually, but that's kind of what I was getting out of the show. Like I enjoyed watching it, but I just felt like, you know, we want to criticize everybody with the same level of criticism, right? Like, were these the right decisions to make? Not, we're on a good pace. We have good momentum, so it's all good. We're gonna sell out WrestleMania. We're gonna make a record gate. Were these the best decisions to make on this night? Is the way I'm thinking of it. But you know, I have a critical eye sometimes. So.
Yeah, it's hard to. I think it's hard to make the judgment call now. I think obviously hindsight is always 20/20, and we'll have a better idea, you know, once we get really deep in the weeds on WrestleMania season. But I completely get the criticism of thinking, you know, I think that there is legitimacy to the criticism that Jey Uso is a one-note character. I really enjoy what Jey does, and I enjoy the character. I enjoy the mic work. I enjoy the charisma, the way that he connects with the crowd. But there is an element to his game that is not quite at the level that WWE typically expects from its main eventers in this era.
At WrestleMania, especially.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that the point that I kind of made earlier that I think rings true is that I think that with Jey and Gunther, they are looking for a big moment and not necessarily a big match. I think that they want that huge pop when Jey beats Gunther, and I think Gunther can afford to take that loss, and they're not necessarily worried about it being, you know, that 4+ star match that people want to see in a main event at WrestleMania, because they'll have other guys that can do that. But I absolutely see the criticism and people questioning whether it's the right move to put a character of that caliber in that position at WrestleMania. Greg, where do you stand on that?
I think Jay's a little more well-rounded than we give him credit for. I think, does he lean into the yeet stuff too much? I don't know, maybe, but the fans love it. But this is a guy who went through the ringer with the bloodline stuff, and that helped shape who he is as a character. And I think just because he's not involved with the bloodline anymore doesn't mean that he doesn't carry that around with him. Doesn't mean that's not a part of his character. And I think, his matches with Gunther have been very good. I have no reason to believe that with the added drama of it being a world title match at WrestleMania, that it won't be a very good match again at WrestleMania. So I don't have the fears of it being another Jey versus Jimmy match where they don't click, because we've seen Jey and Gunther have good matches before. If you don't like the winners, if you have a problem with the winners tonight, I completely understand. Like, these were not slam dunk choices by any means. But one thing I disagree with Dr. Doom about is Jey Uso winning is WWE resting on their laurels. Resting on their laurels would have been an obvious choice, like a John Cena or a Roman Reigns, someone who is already a made man and, they could be plugged in anywhere. I think going with a complete surprise to many, like Jey Uso was WWE kind of taking a left turn when we expected a right turn. And to me, that's thinking outside the box. And that's a good thing that I wish that they would do more often. How many times do we find us talking about the Royal Rumble and saying, well, there's maybe two winners here. I wish that once they would do a real surprise winner. And I think they did that here within reason. I mean, they didn't put Joe Hendry over, or they didn't put, Dominic Mysterio over, but Jey Uso is a surprise. He was not probably in the top 5 or 6 guys that you would have expected to win going in. And I think they should be credited with thinking outside the box in that way, in a way that they don't usually do for the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the one area where maybe people would be looking at this a little bit differently is if they hadn't gone to the well again with Jey and Gunther at Saturday night's main event last week. If they had saved that, because we've seen Gunther and Jey at a point in the past, but to have just done it last week and now immediately to go back to the well on it after giving it, away for free on, granted, a show that you promote as larger than your weekly TV, but is still a network TV show, albeit a special. I think, it might have been, we might be seeing a little less negativity if that were the case, but I trust that they have some sort of plan there. I mean, I think that, perhaps they wanted to have recency bias of Jey, visibly losing to Gunther again, so that they can kind of sell that story that he's down on his luck, that he has to go climb up the ladder again, whatever the case may be. But I think that's, worth mentioning too. Sean, anything that you want to add here before I throw it back to Dr. Doom?
Yeah. Greg, you're making me feel negative. I don't mean to be negative. I just Jey. Okay, surprises can be good. I'm not against surprises, and yes, Jey, you can say, is kind of a surprise in a good way because he's over, and he is over with the fans. But if Jey beats Gunther losing twice for the title, which to me, I know, just doesn't make as much sense to me. I know it's the chase and all that. I understand all that. But what about when he wins the title? And then he faces somebody that he's not as good with in the ring with, and he looks really bad. Jey has not gotten better in the ring to me personally. The match with Gunther was okay on Saturday. It wasn't that great to me. It was fine. But Gunther, yes, I trust him to have a decent match with Jey, but it's not, it's going to be in the middle. I want a guy in the Royal Rumble who's going to win it, and it's going to be a main event match. And this, to me, is not going to be a main event match. It's going to be in the middle, at the beginning of the card, and it's going to feel cool because Jey got his moment. And again, I love Jey. He gets his moment. That's cool. But it's not going to feel as big as if he's in the last match at Mania on either night, and it feels special and it feels important. This won't feel as important to me, and I don't think Jey, as much as I think he's done well, has not gotten to main event status for me. I know his name's main event Jey Uso, but he has not gotten to that level for me where I can buy him winning one of the main titles. I just don't buy it. And just because I like him doesn't mean I have to buy him winning a title at this point in his career.
I hate to be that guy, but we've got a couple months left. I don't want to be the let it play out and see where it goes guy, but we're talking about this on the night Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble. So there is plenty of time for things to take on a life of its own and to get us to the point where Jey Uso versus Gunther doesn't feel like a retread of a Saturday night's main event match and does in fact feel like a WrestleMania match. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying there's a lot of time between now and then for this story to develop and keep adding chapters to it to the point where all of a sudden, maybe Jey Uso versus Gunther, maybe it does seem like a WrestleMania, maybe not a main event, but a worthy world title match at that show.
I do think it's good. I mean, we have reactions on both ends of the spectrum in the chat and here, and I think it's good that people are. Yeah, it's fun, but I also think that people are passionate about both positions because so much of the time we get, things that are universally praised or universally lauded, and here I think that both arguments have some pretty valid points, and it's something that is going to be discussed a lot in the coming weeks as we get closer to WrestleMania. Dr. Doom, want to throw back to you anything else that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to say that just to respond real quick. When I said that they were resting on their laurels, I guess what I kind of meant is that when you're in a position where you're going to make a lot of money, you can do whatever you want to. It's kind of like taking crazy shots in basketball when you're up 50 points. So I guess what I was saying is they're taking that risk on Jey Uso, and I understand both of Brandon and Greg's points because going for that moment. I was there when Daniel Bryan beat Triple H in New Orleans. I was actually getting my PhD in University of New Orleans back then. I was there and I saw that moment. I feel like this is not at that level, but it doesn't matter because he's very popular. My thing is long term. After he wins the title, I don't see much. But then again, I don't know what's going to happen. So, I don't want to be thinking negative. It's just the way that my head thinks is that like I can see him winning and the greatness, and then after him falling off, sort of like Rey Mysterio when he won the title. But other than that, I guess I wanted to ask you guys, did you guys think was the star of the men's Royal Rumble match? Was it Braun Breaker, Jacob Fatu, Penta, and were Penta's 2 feet down, or was it only 1 foot?
Yes,
question.
Yes, they were.
So,
yes.
So someone in the chat said that they rewound it and only 1 foot touched. I don't know who it was. So. I didn't get a chance to highlight it, but I haven't gone.
Whatever it was, it was quick, and so
it was.
There was no replays. They didn't show any replay.
Yeah, so no, they weren't going to throw back to it. I don't know if you noticed all night, but Penta was not taking the toss out spots the way that wrestlers always do. He was not holding on to the ropes as he went over. So every time someone tossed Penta, it looked like he was going to be eliminated. And every time, except for that one where both feet might have touched, he just landed softly on the apron like nothing ever happened. So that was pretty incredible body control from Penta, but something tells me that in future Royal Rumbles, he's going to take the message to grab onto the ropes because he was not taking that bump like anybody else. To answer your question, though, I thought the names that you brought up were the highlights for me. I thought Penta was incredible. His first few weeks here on main roster WWE have been, I think, some of the best, maybe the best opening salvo that I can recall for a free agent signing in quite a while. They just clearly have big plans for him, big hopes for him. And so far he's gotten over. He is loaded with charisma. The Zero Miedo gimmick is already over. I just think that there's a lot of good things coming down the pipeline for him. I thought, like you said, Braun Breaker had a really, really good night, despite the rather unceremonious elimination. There were a lot of good moments for him throughout the match. And then Jacob Fatu just being, shown as a killer again, having big spots with a lot of major people in that match. The unfortunate, untimely elimination from Braun Strowman that, Sean, I see you shaking your head.
Dumb.
Are you referring to that? The
Yeah, it
Strowman
was dumb.
elimination?
It was
Yeah.
dumb. Fatu should not be getting eliminated by Braun Strowman. Period. It just makes no sense. I don't. Yes, they're having a match again, but we don't need to see that again. I mean, Fatu can get his win against Strowman. Okay, like Strowman is just he's a big guy, but he's not over like. I mean, it's not gonna. Fatu's already a badass. He doesn't need to beat Strowman again to prove he's a badass. I mean, it's just. I just didn't like it. I didn't think it helped him at all.
Yeah, Four Eyes Malone in the chat saying Penta and Roxanne too getting a lot of time says a lot. I think that's true. I mean, Penta was in there for over 40 minutes. That definitely sends a pretty clear message that they have high hopes for him. And I also wanted to highlight too. It was Glenn B who rewound it, and it was just 1 foot. If he's remembering correctly. So everybody go after him if he's wrong when everyone else gets a chance to go back and look at it again. Greg, Sean, throw out there most impressive for you in that men's match.
I think the two that stand out are Jacob Fatu and Braun Breaker, which was mentioned. Breaker had that moment where I think he went face to face with Fatu, but nothing ever came of it. So that was an interesting tease that maybe will be paid off down the line. But he had some nice moments. Obviously, the elimination of ISHO Speed was one that's going to be replayed for quite a while. That spear. So he was not in there a long time, but he, as JR would say, maximized his minutes in the Royal Rumble. And this kind of match is really made for someone like Jacob Fatu, who just goes in there and destroys everything. And even after he was eliminated, throwing the chairs toward the ring and stuff like that. That would be the way that you would expect someone who's been portrayed as he has been to react to being eliminated. So I thought it was a strong night for him. I mean, this was really really backloaded Royal Rumble. I thought the first two being Rey Mysterio and Penta was really cool. Yeah. That was a really nice moment. But I think, having so many big stars coming out basically, starting at 16 with Roman Reigns, then you had Drew McIntyre, and you had Jey Uso, and you had AJ Styles, and John Cena, and CM Punk, and Seth Rollins. It really made it hard for any one of them to stand out because they weren't in there for really long enough to stand out, and they had so many other big stars in there that needed to be protected. So those, Fatu and Breaker were the ones that come to mind that I thought had a strong night.
Yeah, I would say, Fatu initially till the really bad elimination, just won't get that out of my head, just really bad. Other than that, he was great, but you can't tell me the elimination was good. I mean, it wasn't good. It hurt a little bit, but he was so good before that. It kind of, I can live with it. Breaker, getting eliminated by Reigns, at least, like, okay, that makes sense. And he was he looked great. I mean, everybody does the spears too, a little bit much, but Breaker has a great spear. His spear is awesome, and it looked really good on Roman. And so I thought he had a great showing. And I thought, like I said, Penta, I hope his knee was okay. I know when he actually went out, I know he kind of grabbed his knee. He might have just been selling, but I hope, everything's okay. Cause like I said, they just got him and he's looked good so far. So I hope he's fine. But, and then, Cena just was the worst by far. I hope it gets better because not a good start tonight.
Yeah, there was a lot of Cena comes from an era where I think that there was a lot less nuance displayed on screen, and you kind of saw that tonight. He was very much the Cena of old. I don't think that you're going to get much adjustment from him at this stage of his career, and it does stick out more when no one else is doing it. And I think that maybe he's self-aware enough to adjust going forward, but so far we just haven't seen it. Dr. Doom, anything else that you wanted to bring up before I let you go?
Yeah, the last thing, and I apologize if you guys already brought this up because I had to reset my computer. But the KO Cody Rhodes match, like when I was talking to my friend, I was saying that it's obviously Sami Zayn's fault that Kevin Owens lost the match, but I'm just saying that sort of just as a, how do you guys feel that Kevin Owens can blame that on Sami Zayn, or do you think that they're going to end up teaming together? And again, if you guys already discussed that, issue, then I apologize and you can move on. And
No, we talked about the match at length, but didn't really get a whole lot into the Sammy and KO stuff. Greg, I'll let you take it.
I think that's one of the interesting things coming out of this is what is the relationship now between Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. You can certainly see a scenario where Kevin Owens, in the current incarnation of his character, blames Sami Zayn, right, for not stopping Cody Rhodes from climbing the ladder and getting the title. And they even did the wide shot, right? They did the wide shot when Cody was climbing to show Sami on the outside not moving. So maybe that plays into it. I certainly like that idea, although that leads you down to Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn again. And so how many times do we rehash that? Or do you go, as Dr. Doom mentioned, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens teaming up somehow? I think there were enough miscommunications with Sami Zayn in the Royal Rumble to lead to babyfaces being angry with him, and maybe he sees the heel light that Kevin Owens is showing him. I don't know. I conceivably that could happen too. So I'm not really sure. I don't have a strong feeling either way. But as we kick into gear for WrestleMania season, it is interesting that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens have found each other once again.
Yeah, Sean, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was definitely. I mean, I thought there was a chance that Sammy would come out during the match, and it was kind of just weird, him just kind of, like you said, hanging around for a little bit, and then, of course, it makes sense if he would check on KO, just again, to have their best friends, in quote unquote. So I mean, I get why he would do that. So I'm definitely intrigued on. I'm assuming that. KO is going to be out obviously for a little bit, and then when he comes back, he's going to be like, Sammy, you could have helped me maybe, and why'd you not, in some way, or just kind of find a way to get ticked off at Sammy. I don't see them teaming up. They've just done that recently, and they won at WrestleMania recently. I don't think they're going to do that again. I think if they're going to have a match, it's going to be against each other, and they can build a story between the two of them to have a fun Mania match. But yeah, it was just weird with Sammy tonight with, that in the match and then not getting much in the Rumble. I'm really curious where they're going with him. I hope that they don't go heel because I just think he's a great babyface and I just wouldn't want to mess with that. But I'm curious to see where they're going with him. I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely hope that Sammy remains in that babyface role. I think that he's just been so good there. And KO has turned quite a bit. Sammy was a heel for quite a long time, but he's just so effective as a babyface. And the fans love cheering for him from underneath. I still think that there's money in a Sami Zayn World Championship win at some point if they were to really build it up. He's the closest thing that they've had to Daniel Bryan in a very, very long time. So that's something that I would definitely like to see at some point. Dr. Doom, thanks so much for calling in, chatting with us. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much, and have a great night. Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
For sure.
You too, man.
Yeah, and I want to just throw out a quick plug here for our VIP members. You can become a PWTorch VIP member if you would like to be part of these post shows, this Wrestling Night in America. We obviously open that up exclusively for VIP members to join us either on video or over audio, as Andy did earlier tonight. And then as Dr. Doom joined us on video just then. You can go to pwtorch.com/go VIP. Allows you to add all of the VIP podcasts to whatever streaming source you use, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Android apps. You can also stream directly from the VIP site. That gets you access to a whole bunch of stuff. For those joining us on YouTube and elsewhere, you can see there the list of things. But for audio listeners who might be listening to this afterward, ad-free podcasts, VIP-only podcasts, 35 years worth of podcasts and newsletter archives. You get the weekly PDF newsletter, whole bunch of back issues, ad-free version of the website, and then, of course, the big piece, a whole bunch of great audio content, including the fix, everything with Rich Fan. You get the Wade Keller hotlines. You, of course, get Greg Parks Out Loud, who is one of my co-hosts here this evening, and so much more. So certainly a huge thanks to all of our VIP members for joining us tonight and for participating in the show. And for having such a lively chat as well. It's certainly been a whole lot of fun. Last couple things I want to touch on here before we wrap up, guys. somebody mentioned it in the chat, and I'm glad that they did, because it was something I noticed right out of the gate tonight. I thought that the bar at the bottom of the screen for both the men's and women's Royal Rumble
Yes.
was a fantastic addition. They gave you a bunch of info all night that made it feel like a real sporting event. So they were recounting, they were counting back the entrants as they came out, giving you their numbers, giving you some historical data about how many rumbles they competed in the past, maybe if they had any records for eliminations or length of time in the match. It was also tracking number of wrestlers currently in the match versus number of wrestlers eliminated. Had a bunch of anecdotes throughout the night, was always counting who the next entrant was, who the last entrant was. It was just a really, really nice touch, a really clean look at the bottom of the screen. Wasn't totally unlike, crayons at the bottom of a football game, where it's not overly intrusive, but provides you a whole bunch of information that you might want. Guys, did that stand out to either of you? Something you would like to see continue going forward? What'd you think of it?
Yeah, that was really cool. Steve mentioned in the chat that they should have had a running clock. If only WWE actually kept to the 2 minutes, but they kind of fudge that when they need to. It really all depends. But yeah, that would have been a cool addition too. But no, I thought it was fantastic. And Michael Cole was very ready, as he always is, with additional information about these wrestlers and their Royal Rumble stats. This is the one match where you can kind of do it with. There are not many matches like this where these kind of numbers are available. So I really enjoyed the presentation of it tonight.
Yeah, I loved it too. I thought it was really, really cool. I know they've been doing more stuff, like this. They started with showing the results on the screen, during shows, and just kind of keeping you updated on what's going on if you just tuned in. It's really fun. I mean, yeah, everything, the numbers, like you said, and the people that already been eliminated, and showing that who got eliminated, like that was just really, really interesting. And I thought it was really, really fun. I never even thought that could be a possibility. And then my friend and I saw it, and we were just like, wow, that's really, really cool. I really enjoyed it all the way around. And about the clock, oh my gosh, the worst was, when Charlotte was taking forever to get, I was like, oh my gosh, this has to be like 5 minutes before like anything even happened, before she even got in the ring. So yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah, I don't think so. A little more than 2 minutes each time.
They were. It's funny because when you're covering the show in real time, of course, I'm timing the matches for my report at PWTorch.com, and it was. I've seen them be more off than they were tonight. They were keeping time better than they have in some of the last few years. And there were definitely a few that went over the 2 minute mark and a few that went under. But by the end of each match, I mean, if you figure the running clock is exactly 2 minutes, then the 30th entrant should be coming out, basically just before the 60-minute mark, because you've got two wrestlers starting, before. And they were close. I mean, they were, I would say, like 45 seconds to a minute off in most instances. Like by the time 30 entered, they were, I think in both instances, they were like 45 seconds to a minute behind. So they had used a little bit of extra time. So, wrestlers had taken longer than 2 minutes to come out, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And I've seen some where entry times varied wildly, like anywhere between a minute and 10 seconds all the way up to like 2:20. So I think they did a better job this year, but it was a little bit more noticeable because of all the data that they had on the screen that we normally don't see. But Sean, I think you nailed it. Like, this is something that they've leaned into a little bit more heavily, and I think that by and large, all of the results have been positive. I can't think of a single instance of a small production change or addition that I've just thought, man, this just outright doesn't work. They should never do this again. All of them have been good to great. And I think you're seeing just a lot of positive changes on the production side in the post Vince McMahon era. And this one tonight was certainly one of my favorites.
Yeah, absolutely.
anything else either of you guys want to add before we wrap things up? We're a little over 2 hours in here, but we had so many comments that I'm certainly appreciative for in the chat. Highlighted many of those. Had a couple of VIP callers on a very, very eventful show. So, Greg, Sean, I'll go to you first. Greg, floor is yours. Anything you want to add? Plus, plug your stuff.
No, I thought this was a good show. It was not perfect. I think when you have two matches the size of the Royal Rumble matches, where you have 30 participants and matches that go over 60 minutes, there are going to be holes. There are going to be nits that you could pick. But in the end, holistically, when you look at it, from that 25,000 foot view, I think both were good. The tag match, it's kind of sad because I like all four wrestlers, but it didn't click from a character standpoint. Didn't click from even an in-ring standpoint. I didn't think as well as it could have. And the title match was good, worthy of the culmination of a Kevin Owens Cody Rhodes feud that we've seen play out on TV. So a thumbs up show that does create a lot of intrigue for WrestleMania. And if you're WWE, that's your goal. You want to create an intrigue. You want to get people tuning into Raw and SmackDown to see how all of these twisted pieces unfold over the next few months. So they did their job in that regard. And so I thought it was a good show. And thumbs up. And you can catch my column almost every week in the Torch newsletter. And to go along with that, Greg Parks Out Loud, VIP members of PWTorch.com, which Brandon mentioned there, and plugging some of the audio. That is a reading of my column where I get to expand a little bit on my thoughts and some of the things that I write. Plus, each week on PWTorch.com, on both the free and VIP side, you can catch a weekly Parks' take that's a little shorter and a little more timely about something that's going on, happening in wrestling right now, whereas my column may not always be as timely. So check that out as well. And I do hope to get, now that my life is slowing down a little bit, or it will soon, hopefully. I do hope to get on audio like this more often, whether it's the flagship, whether it's some post shows like this. So keep an ear and an eye out on my social media at Greg M. Parks, and I'll be sure to plug whenever I'm on.
Cool. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, Greg. Well, I want to say first, I hope you feel better. Congratulations for everything you got going on, man. Seriously, you've got a lot of cool stuff going on. It's been fun to hear about that. And I want to say real quick, I appreciate being on with you guys, because here at the Torch, and I've been blessed to be a member for a long time, and Wade knows this, but there's things we agree on, disagree on, and that's what's great about having conversation about these things. I mean, we're never going to all agree or all on everything, and that's what's fun about wrestling. That people have different views, and that's why I love being on here, because you give me the platform to come on here and talk about what I think, and not everybody's going to agree with me, and I'm not going to agree with everybody, but that's fine. I still love everybody on here. I still appreciate everybody's viewpoint. That's what's great. But I thought the show overall was very good. Have reservations. I definitely am very nervous to where they could go, but I'm still excited. I'm still intrigued. I mean, again, we don't know, and that's what's great about this show, is we don't just know every match they're going to do, other than it looks like Jay Gunther, which hopefully they'll build me up to that match and get me more excited. Right now I'm not, but I hope they can, and it should be a lot of fun going into the Chamber. And Raw on Netflix has been really fun. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I just appreciate you guys having me on. It's always fun, always a blast.
Great to talk to you, Sean, as always.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
Sure. Thanks so much. Thanks so much to Sean, and thanks so much to Greg. That's gonna do it for us. We made it through, Greg. 2 hour and about 15-minute show. Whole lot to talk about. Had so much in the way of VIP participation. I want to send my thanks to Andy and to Dr. Doom for jumping on, as well as everyone in the chat. And Greg, as always, it's been a pleasure working with you tonight. You can find me on Blue Sky Social mostly, at LeClair12, and the at bsky.social, that whole thing. Haven't quite got used to that yet. On PWTorch, you can find my coverage of both WWE PLEs and AEW pay-per-views. So I do the alt perspective reporting on all of those events, as well as hosting these post shows after most or all WWE and AEW major events, schedule permitting. Again, thanks so much to all our VIP members. Thanks to Dr. Doom and to Andy from Houston, and of course to Greg. Until next time, this has been Wrestling Night in America.